guys, welcome back to the channel. Currently reporting from Hustler Casino where I just arrived. Drove through LA, there was a bunch of traffic, but maybe the day will get a little better in there. We're playing some 50-50 100 today, and it's actually a game that I built myself, so it's gonna be a fun lineup. Mike X is also in the game, and it's his birthday, so I got him a birthday cake coming on the way. That should be fun. And yeah, it's gonna be 50-50, like I said, with a $100 straddle. Speaking of Mike X, there he is right there. Birthday boy! Perfect timing right there. But yeah, that's enough blabbering. Let's get inside, play some poker, hopefully win some money, and I'll report back with you guys right after. All right, guys, back underway here at Hustler. Today we're playing 50-50 no limit. The 100 was often on, as it is in this first interesting hand, where I look down at ace jack from middle position. I open it up to 300, then it gets around to Lexo, a fellow YouTube poker vlogger that I'm sure many of you guys know. He makes it 1300 to go. Back around to me, and I think a little bit of all three options actually makes some sense here. To quote Doug Polk, but this time I just call in position and we go to a flop of jack 6 deuce with 3 diamonds. Mixed feelings about this one. We've got top pair, top kicker, but of course the 3 diamonds out there could be a little bit concerning. Lexo starts with a check and I bet around half pot, 1400. I think this makes some sense with a strong hand like mine. Could also have bluffs as well, so I put in a bet. Lexo makes the call. He's not done with his pocket eights, and we see the 5 of diamonds on the turn. Lexo now checks to me, and with my hand having just a pair on a 4 diamond board, I think checking back is okay. Would also do this with some smaller flushes from time to time, so that's what I do this time, and we see the 8 of diamonds on the river. Putting 5 diamonds on the board, of course, and making it so that I am playing the board because my pair no longer counts as we both have a flush in this instance. But Lex now checks it over to me, which makes me feel like I probably can steal this pot. If he had the ace of diamonds or the king of diamonds, I suspect he would have bet. If he's trapping with a high diamond in his hand, good for him, but I'm going to try to take this pot down. So I put in a bet of around half pot. Would also do this if I was betting a flush for value, so I think the sizing makes sense. Lexo does not seem to love it, and after a few seconds, lets go of his rivered set of eights, aka the flush that he's playing on the board. And we take this one down. Could have been a chop, but instead it goes our way. Good start to the night. In this next one, I am in the double straddle for $200. Mike X limps in on my left for 200, and then Lex makes it 700 on the button. I defend with Jack 10 offsuit, and Mike X calls as well. So we go 3 ways to a flop out of position, which doesn't look too bad at all. It's Jack 10 9 with 2 clubs. So we've got top 2, but it is a very sketchy board. Plenty of draws out there and such. So I think I'm probably going to go for a check raise, but we never get the chance as this one checks all the way around. Turn card is the deuce of spades, and now I'm going to bet for protection / value. A hand as strong as 2 pair, even on a board like this, is plenty good enough to bet. So I put in 1,400 bucks. Mike X makes the call, which I think is indicative of some sort of draw, and then Lexo calls as well. So it seems all of us are still interested in this pot one way or another, looking for a clean river, but that's not really what we get. It's the 4 of spades. So it does bring in the backdoor flush, but at the same time, plenty of draws missed, like the front door flush, which would be clubs, as well as any potential straight draw, which there are also many of. But either way, I think the best play here is to check. We could get value from bluffs and also protect if we're in trouble against a better hand. So I check. And now Mike X does not. Instead, he bets $4,500. Now it gets to Lex, and he doesn't seem to love the situation, but after some consideration, he makes the call. And with that action, when it gets back to me, I don't think Jack 10, despite it being top 2 pair, is going to be the winning hand more often than not. So I make a grumpy fold, and luckily we get to at least see that it was the right decision this time as Mike X turns over King 5 of spades for the rivered flush. This was something I was concerned about. I figured either one of these guys could be playing spades this way. Luckily, we avoid too much pain in this one. So I think that was a decent play. Why don't we move on to a hand where you could say the opposite about my decision making. In this one, Sandor opens to 500. Dylan calls, Lexo calls, and I put on the squeeze with King 8 offsuit from the straddle. Don't ask me why I did this. Not a good decision whatsoever. My reasoning is this is a fun lineup and I want to give action in spots that I think make sense. And this is one of them because if Sandor doesn't have a super strong hand, as you guys can see here, he really doesn't with Queen Jack offsuit, then we can take down some dead money with Dylan and Lexo calling in the field. And if one of these guys does have a strong hand, well, you know, like I said, happy to give action and give some money back. So I put in $3,000. Happy to see Sandor make the fold. But now Dylan decides, the hell with it, he's had enough, and jams all in for $12,000. Lexo folds, now it's back to me, and it's $9,000 for me to call into a pot that is now $16,000. And these are the situations you put yourself in when you play garbage hands like King 8 offsuit. But alas, here we are, and it's time to make a decision, which I think is actually pretty close. Now, if you break down the preflop action, Dylan just called Sandor's original open, which I take to mean he doesn't have a big pocket pair. If he's got an ace high, we're in trouble. But if he doesn't have a big pocket pair and too many aces that play this way, then most likely I think his holding is a pocket pair below my 8, meaning anything from deuces up to like pocket 7s. And yeah, I think Dylan would sometimes play those hands in this fashion, initially calling Sandor's raise, but then deciding that I'm squeezing light and a pair is probably good, so he's going with it. If that's the case, then we definitely have odds to call. Now, if he's playing a pocket pair bigger than my 8, which, as you guys can see here, is exactly what's going on, Dylan's got pocket 9s, or of course, if he's playing an ace high, then we're in some trouble. But we're getting a good price to call, right around 2-1, so we don't need that much equity to make this call okay. As you guys can see here on the screen, I've got 37% and Dylan has 63, which I think is just close enough for me to make the call, but that's, you know, with me seeing the cards. But against all those hands I mentioned, I think it's actually a simple call, despite me not loving the situation. So that's a very long-winded explanation as to what happened here. So I make the call, hoping we've got 2 overs or at least 2 live cards. Dylan gives me the bad news, telling me he's got a pair bigger than pocket 8s, but smaller than pocket 10s. That's not good, but what do you know? We flop a king on the first board, actually the only board, as we've agreed to run it just once in this instance. But heartbreak strikes on the turn as the 9 of spades comes out, and that means we're drawing dead. Gonna lose this $25,000 pot, which I guess is justice since, you know, Dylan's got the best hand pre-flop, so I guess that's how things should work in the end. Would have been pretty sweet to win this one, but instead, I embarrassed myself on the internet yet again. On to the next hand. Here we have 2 players limping in for $50 before I look down at the very powerful Queen-deuce offsuit in late position. Standard raise to 300. Mike X calls in the cutoff. Dylan calls in the small blind, and then Lexo puts in a raise up to $2,000. Gets back around to me, and well, like I said, Queen-deuce offsuit, very good hand. We could flop 4 of a kind. We could flop 2 different flush draws. We could flop 2 pair. So I think it's a straightforward re-raise here. I make it $5,000 to go. Lexo makes the call. As you guys can see, we're in some trouble as he's got pocket kings. Let's see if he can crack my Queen-deuce suited. Off to a flop, which comes down ace, jack, 4, rainbow. Lexo checks, and well, I did a bunch of raising pre-flop, so I could represent some strong stuff on a board like this. Let's start with a small bet, $2,800. Would also do this if I had sets, ace, king, 2 pair, etc. So I think with Queen-deuce, it makes some sense. Lex makes the call. He's not done with it just yet, and we see the 10 of hearts on the turn. Good card for me to continue bluffing, all jokes aside. We've got a queen, so we could represent king-queen in this instance, and like I said on the flop, we could still have plenty of value hands considering the pre-flop action. This is the only silver lining of this hand, that despite me getting super out of line pre-flop with a hand as bad as this, we get a great board to continue applying pressure, in my opinion. So that's what I do. I put in a bet of $8,000, trying to set up an all-in on the river, just like I would if I had something good. And Lexo does not seem to love it, and I don't blame him whatsoever. This is a disgusting situation for pocket kings, just not the board you want to see against someone who is continuing to bet. So I don't blame him for eventually folding, We are playing the stand-up game, so I have to sheepishly turn this one over, but we do earn ourselves a button and are safe from paying the bounty. This next one is another unorthodox hand. There's a raise to 300, Dr. P calls, and I look down at ace-8 suited in this small blind, and I don't really think calling in this situation is the best play. I think probably folding, as nitty as that sounds, or occasionally re-raising are the way to go. But this time I just get in there and call, and Mike X instantly punishes the weakness by making it $2,000 to go. Everyone else folds and gets back around to me. I've got ace-8 suited, and it is Mike X's birthday. There is no way in hell I am not giving this man action, even out of position, after pretty much announcing that I don't have a good hand. So I put in the money, and we go to a flop of 9-6-4 with 2 spades, 1 club. Absolutely nothing going on for me. But at the same time, this is a board that he's going to miss really often, and if he doesn't have an overpair, it's going to be tough for him to hang on against some pressure. So I check it over to him, and he puts in a small bet of 1,200. I don't think this is the kind of board you want to be down betting as the pre-flop 3-better. It's just not really the best kind of flop, so I decide to try to punish that, along with my reasoning I just mentioned, which is if he doesn't have an overpair, we can take this one down against some better ace highs, for example. So I try it out. 3,600 now to go. And Mike X does not seem to love it, but as you guys can see, he has whiffed this flop with his ace-jack offsuit, so he lets it go, and we take this one down.
Happy birthday, dear Mike X. Happy birthday to you. Thank you, guys.
In the following fun hand, we are going to downgrade from ace-8 suited to ace-8 unsuited. In this one, I make it 300 to go. Everyone and their mother calls, and we go multi-way to a flop of 9-3-3 rainbow. Now, once again, I have missed and don't really have anything, but considering the pre-flop action, which was that I raised and everyone called, I don't think anyone's going to have a 3 super often, even though it is like 6 of us going to this flop. And if anyone's got a 9, it's going to be tough to hang on across multiple streets of aggression when you consider the fact that I'm the only one that could really have an overpair since no one re-raised me pre-flop. So with that in mind, I start with a bet of $1,000. By no means do I really expect to take this one down on the flop, but even if we get called in 1 or 2 spots, I'm going to continue applying pressure on good turn cards, like anything bigger than a 9 pretty much. Only Dylan makes the call, however, so we go heads up to a flop in position as Dylan is in the small blind, and we see a 5 of spades on the turn. Now, it's not really the best card to continue bluffing on because a 9 is still top pair, so we're not really going to get too many folds, I suspect, but then again, we probably can. And, you know, if the river comes a high card, then we can really continue applying pressure and put a 9 in a miserable spot. So Dylan checks again, and now I bet the size of the pot, $4,000. And as you guys can see, Dylan is not loving the situation. And I don't really envy him because with a 9 in this spot, what are you supposed to do? Just keep calling down and pray that you win? I mean, it's easy when you can see the cards, but definitely not easy in practice, especially out of position. So eventually he does let it go. And we steal this one as well. Things so far working out nicely. In the next one, I am in the $100 straddle. There's a raise from turbo to 300. Dylan and Encore make the call, and I defend with ace-5 offsuit. So we go 4 ways to a flop. It's king 3-deuce rainbow. That means we've got a straight draw. And if we hit it, it's going to be pretty disguised. So when Encore leads out of the small blind for 300, I am happy to make the call and see what happens on the turn. Turbo calls as well, so the 3 of us go to a turn, which is not bad at all. It's the ace of diamonds. Not really what I was counting on, but obviously top pair, I'm more than happy to see. Encore now slows down and checks it, and considering that Turbo was the pre-flop raiser and Encore let out from the small blind on the flop, I think a check here makes more sense than a bet, so I check it and see if Turbo wants to take a stab at this one. He does not, however, so the 3 of us go to a river, which is the 8 of hearts. Encore checks again, and now I've got top pair, which rates to be the best hand. I decide to go for a bet of 2,200, which I think is the size of the pot. Turbo thinks for a bit and folds his pair of kings. Nice fold from him, but Encore, as you guys can see, has some trust issues with me after seeing me bet a little too frequently tonight. Decides to look me up with his king-queen suited. Bad timing from him. Unfortunately, I've turned the best hand, and we win this one as well. So finally, we make a hand and get some value. All right, so this next hand is a bit special to me because it is against my man Turbo. Now, many of you guys have no idea who Turbo is, but Turbo is someone I used to play with back in the day at Morongo Casino in those 510 streets. In fact, he and I used to play heads up when the game would break late in the night at Morongo, so we've got a lot of history. In this one, I raise it up to 300 with King 7 suited over a limp, and Turbo makes it 700 on the button. Gets back around to me, and I think making it only 700 doesn't seem like the strongest hand ever, but honestly, I'm really just trying to give Turbo some extra action. That's kind of our MO. We just go nuts pretty much any chance we get. So I make it $2,000 to go. Turbo makes the call, and we go heads up to a flop of Jack 5-3, 2 clubs, and 1 spade. Well, I put in a bunch of money pre-flop, so why not continue pretending that I've got something strong? Put in a bet of 1,300, just like I would with an overpair or really anything good. Turbo makes the call with his ace-queen high, deciding that I'm full of it, and he's right in this case. And he gets the best turn card ever. It's the ace of hearts, so out of nowhere he turns a very strong top pair, and it's pretty disguised as well. I mean, I guess he could have hands like ace-jack and such, but for the most part, he should probably be folding ace-high on the flop. I don't really know. Maybe not. I'm not sure. But anyway, I decide to now check it, and Turbo checks it back. I'm by no means giving up on the hand, but I think delaying the aggression to the river could be a credible story. I might play a hand like ace-10 suited this way or something. So I decide to try to steal this one on the river. But then we make a pair. There's a 7 of hearts. So maybe we beat like random flush draws like king 10 of clubs or stuff like that. I wonder whether or not Turbo would check back a flush draw on the turn, and I think he actually would, considering that the ace should hit me, and I think he knows that, so he might just take his free card on the river, which means we now have the best hand, if he does have any sort of floats that didn't pair up, with a 7. So I decide to check it and see what he does, hoping we can get to showdown, but it's not going to be cheap after all. Turbo makes it $2,700, a little under half pot, and now we are in a tough situation. We're beating bluffs like, you know, missed flushes or, for example, king queen or queen 10 suited, but we're also losing to all sorts of hands like a slow played ace on the turn. 6-4 now gets there, although, you know, it's questionable how often he plays 6-4 this way pre-flop. In addition to those facts, we are also getting a delicious price to make this call. Don't have to be right super often, but at the same time, is he bluffing often enough to make this call? I don't know. It's a pretty funny spot because Turbo and I have, like I said, been battling for a long time, and he loves to put me in difficult situations. He loves to battle, and most importantly, he loves to just own me and show bluffs right in my face. So I don't want to be getting bluffed, but I also don't want to pay him off. After a few minutes, I decide to let this one go, thinking I'm probably beat. And sure enough, he is kind enough to show me the ace-queen, getting there essentially against my king high. Good for you, Turbo, just like old times. And with that, we arrive at one of the biggest pots of this afternoon. This one I've got Jack 10 in middle position. I open it up to 300 and get called by Dylan on the button and Dr. P in the straddle. So 3 of us go to a flop, which is ace king 6. Now, considering I'm the pre-flop raiser, I think it's okay to bet on this board. We've also got a straight draw, of course. So I put in a bet of 300 after Dr. P checks. Dylan makes the call, and Dr. P gets out of the way. Looking for, guess what card? That's right, the queen. This one is the queen of diamonds, which brings in another flush draw, but of course, it is the dream card. Plenty of draws available, and we've got the nuts. Time to start piling money into this pot. Now, if I had any sort of bluffs, I think an overbet would be the play, so I do the same thing with value in this case. I put in $2,300, and now Dylan thinks for a bit before announcing a raise. I can't really believe my eyes. I think most likely we've probably got the same hand at this point, but in case we don't, after he makes it $6,000 with 13K left, I just go all in, and we don't get snap called. So it looks like we do have the best hand. By that I mean, well, we obviously have the best hand, but it looks like we don't have the same hand. But after a minute, Dylan decides, if you've got it, you've got it. He makes the call with his turned 2 pair, and that is, of course, the definition of running hot right there. 3 outs on the turn to make his hand and mine as well, and we get one of those cards. An absolute dream. Pot is $40,000. We elect to run it twice and hold on both boards, so suddenly we are having a much better night. And this was the biggest pot of the stream, and also the last interesting hand I played on stream, but the biggest pot of my night came a few minutes after the cameras were shut off, so stay tuned for that. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed. right, guys, so that brings an end to this 50-50 game that we put together, and I gotta say it was a success. Not necessarily because of the money, but just because it was a great time, and I think everyone in the game enjoyed themselves, win or lose, which is always a great situation. However, the money does matter, so let's talk about that. Before we jump into some final results, you guys gotta hear one last hand that I played after the cameras were shut off as it goes. In fact, I think Mike X, once again, happy birthday to him, he actually filmed the hand, I believe. So if he did, then the video will be right here. But essentially, this hand went down where it folded to June in the small blind. He opened up the action to 300. I re-raised on his left in the middle blind. Straddle was on with ace-9 of clubs. Straddle folds, June calls. So we go heads up in position to a chef's kiss of a flop. It's ace-9-5 rainbow with a club out there. So we've got top two and the backdoor nut flush draw. June starts with a check. I bet around half pot, like 1,300 bucks, and he makes the call. Turn card comes, it's a 4, offsuit 4, full rainbow on board. No reason for concern. So when he checks, I continue betting. This time I put in $7,000. Big bet. Same thing I would do if I had a bluff. So I think it makes sense with a strong hand. And of course we can target maximum value from any ace holding he might have. So that's what I put in, 7,000, and I'm happy to see he does not fold. Instead, he makes the call. Big pot all of a sudden going to a river, which is another 5. Not too concerning unless we're up against ace-5, but that seems super unlikely, not just mathematically, but also based on the way the hand's played out. He's got around 20K left at this point, so when he checks, I of course just go all in, and we don't get insta-called, so we know at that point that we have the winning hand. He doesn't insta-fold either. In fact, he thinks for a while before finally saying, if you got it, you got it. I call. Sadly, I do got it this time, and we win the biggest pot of the night for myself. We ended up playing like another 30 minutes after that, but nothing too crazy happened. And in the end, I ended up winning just shy of $50,000 across the like 7 hours that I played. Not bad at all, especially for this game. It didn't play that big, so a 50K come up is more than welcome. And it looks like perhaps the start of a heater. Knock on wood, fingers crossed. But maybe, just maybe, we are back on a heater coming off this 30K profit in Texas, and now back here in LA winning another 50. Not a bad month whatsoever. But yeah, that's all I got for you guys. As always, thank you for watching. Thanks for all the support. If you gave this video a thumbs up, I appreciate that. And until next time, good luck at your local tables. Peace.